What is up, everyone? Welcome to another special edition of What's the Tea? And this is the moment all of you have been waiting for. Of What's the Tea? We are going to be talking about the cultural phenomenon that has just taken over the world in the past like 12 years. We are talking about the one, the only Game of Thrones. Now, I've seen it before, but Q hasn't, so I'm very interested to hear his thoughts on the first season. Cause y'all, he watched it all in one day, and he was flooding the chat. Like it's about to get interesting. So, Q, what are your initial thoughts of watching? I mean, this is being your first time. What what was your mindset going into watching it?
First, what's up, Jay? Glad to see you can make it. And secondly, yeah, this me, your boy Quan Star G, and watching Game of Thrones for the first time. That was an experience. That was an experience, to say the least. Um, I had never watched the first series of Game of Thrones ever. Um, Watching House of the Dragon when it came out last year made me go, yeah, I should probably watch the OG series so I can get the lay of the land from the beginning of the series is, or its humbled beginnings. And yeah, needless to say, watching it for the first time, it was definitely a major experience, a very, 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 very big experience, and I see why everybody was in love with it when it came out. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I can't wait to get into it as we go further along into this episode.
Okay, cool. You put the tweet out to let people know we live at the moment.
Typing it up right now because I'm doing it on my laptop because my phone is charging.
Got you. So season one of Game of Thrones begins with a young man and his companions pretty much fleeing from the wall because there are White Walkers trying to attack them, and so they head to the Westerosi North. It's not Winterfell is not necessarily it is the North, but it's not what the Northmen, like the Wildlings, call the North. But they go to Winterfell, and while we're there, we meet the Starks. And the head of the family is Eddard, also known as Ned Stark, his wife, Catelyn Stark, who is also a Tully from Riverrun. And we meet their children. We meet Robb Stark, Sansa, Bran, and Rickon. And then we also meet Jon Snow, who is Ned's bastard. Now, further on into the series, you know it's everybody knows now, but it's a very important storyline for John later on. But as of right now, everyone considers him to be Ned Stark's bastard that he had an affair with when he was fighting and brought him back to Winterfell after the war was over. And, the Starks are just chilling in Winterfell, doing what they do. You know, the first scene we see of the children, it's Robb, John teaching Bran how to shoot an arrow. Bran's not hitting his target, and but they're teaching him. And Arya, she hits the target straight away. Now, I love Arya Stark from beginning from we first meet her all the way to the end of the series because she is she probably has the most one of the most interesting character developments in the show because she's small. Well, the reason why I personally feel attached to Arya is because people don't expect a lot from her. Like she's small, she's sneaky, she's stealthy, but she's true, she's loyal, she's brave. All pretty much all the attributes you want in a heroine, she has them, but in unexpected ways. And each child, they have their own personalities. Like Robb, of course, he's the oldest true son of Ned Stark, so he has you know, this paternal instinct about him. John, he loves his siblings, but he's always felt like the outcast. Bran, he just wants to be just to be as good as his brothers. And Rickon, we don't really we Rickon he's mainly is just there, but he's little, so he doesn't really have a lot to work with because he's only like 6 when we first meet him, and pretty much it's just them living their day, and then all of a sudden King Robert Baratheon comes to meet them in Winterfell, and we meet the Baratheons slash Lannisters, and we meet Robert Baratheon, hefty guy, a rough guy, but him and Ned, they fall in the trenches together. They're BFFs, and his wife Cersei Lannister, who, oh Cersei, there's a lot to be said about Cersei, but she's probably one of the best villains in the show. But right now, she's just a wife who just can't stand her husband. Her brother Jamie, who is part of the King's Guard, and then we meet their son, Robert and Cersei's son Joffrey, who is a menace. And Robert pretty much is coming to Ned to ask him to come back to King's Landing, which is where the capital, which is where all the stuff goes down. And there's this man named John Arryn who was killed, and John Arryn was the hand of the king, and they're trying to figure out like why did he die, like what happened to him, because John Arryn is also Catelyn Stark's brother-in-law, and Catelyn Stark's sister is the Lady of the Vale. She's a Lady of the Vale, and Ned goes to King's Landing, as pretty much she's forced to go to to King's Landing because Robert really wants him there. So Ned's going to King's Landing. He's trying to do his best as the king, but he's in over his head because when you're in the capital city, there are bound to be issues, backstabbing, murder, mayhem, you name it. And then on the other side of Westeros, we have Daenerys Targaryen, the one, the only Daenerys Targaryen. When we first meet her, she's in Pentos. Her and her brother Viserys, they are. She has just been wed to Khal Drogo, and of course, Jason Momoa plays Khal Drogo, and her brother Viserys is not a very nice man. And Khal Drogo isn't. When we first meet him, he's not a very nice man. He's a warmonger. Like that's what the Dothraki is known for. And he's a very rough guy. He's rough with Daenerys. And one thing that I really thought was just automatically great character development was in episode 3, Daenerys is like, well, how do I make him love me? Like, what do I do to not make him, be so mean and so rough towards me? And then her, one of the women is like, you have to make sure he makes love to you like a wife, not a whore. Like that's what you have to do. Like you have to show him that you are his wife, not just something that not a possession, not something that he bought. So that's what she does, and that's when their relationship starts to grow, and Khal Drogo starts to understand that, and that's when he if anybody comes at Daenerys, Cal's gonna take care of him from that point on. And as a wedding gift, Daenerys is given 3 dragon eggs. Because Targaryens are known for their dragons, and they found them and they gave them to her as a wedding present. And pretty much through all season 1, it's just her really trying to understand like how to hatch the dragons. Like so, Daenerys isn't a very nice guy, so he keeps reminding Dany that he's the true heir to the throne because their father, Aerys Targaryen, also known as Mad King, he's known for burning people alive. And that's their father. And the reason why Daenerys and Viserys aren't in King's Landing is because Robert Baratheon led a war against Aerys, and that led to them having to flee. And their older brother Rhaegar, who was the heir to the throne, died. And when Robert became king, they had to flee. And so Dany's pretty much been away from her birthplace all her life. And that's pretty much a part of, her her character is, she's this young woman just trying to figure out, where she belongs. She's in this culture that she doesn't really know anything about, and she's always, shut off from King's Landing because that's what she knew growing up.
Yeah. I just want to pop on in because
Mhm.
that was a brilliant explanation of the of really like the the first third or fourth of the season beginning. And I just got to say, like, watching all of that, like the very first thing I see in Game of Thrones, which is the Night's Watchmen and traveling beyond the wall and how they handled our first glimpse at what the White Walkers would end up being. That was such a phenomenally paced and built up to moment, with
Mhm.
the mangled bodies, and then them going back to where they were told they were, and then them not being there because they buried themselves under the snow, and how they popped up on them folks. I thought the Matt Damon looking dude was going to be a main character. He was not. He was not a
Mm-mm.
main character. He was a bit player in this whole shenanigans. And like that whole sequence kind of set the tone for what I would be experiencing over the next 10 episodes. And I just would like to say that, like, there are some significant moments I knew about going into the show because it's, it came out in 2011. It's now 2023. So that's over a decade. So it's going to be impossible to miss everything about the show. So, like, I knew the big moments of the first season, but just experiencing it in real time, I have a rule that it's a good product when you can go into it knowing the spoilers, but it still captures you and engages you with the content, with what you're watching. And that was the case with this season. Seeing Ned Stark and then the Starks and Jon Snow, and how Winterfell was run, and how it started off so jovially. How oh, here are the older sons and their friends, and they're the younger siblings, and what they get into. They established Bran, which I learned was short for Brandon, because all these years I kept hearing Bran. I'm like, well, who names their kid Bran? Like, no, it's actually short for Brandon. But they establishes his mischievous side because he liked to climb, and
Yes.
Sansa and Arya, they don't get along. They're the sisters that don't get along, and basically setting up the subversions early on, because in typical high fantasy books, those are the traits of that wouldn't lean into catastrophe. They'll lend itself to character moments so they can grow from it, but it wouldn't be too catastrophic because of that. But then, as I watched, and hell, by the end of that episode, you see that this isn't your standard endeavor, to say the least.
Mm-mm.
This was something that they were forcing you to pay attention to. So, episode one, I was like, I was kind of floored by all of it, because I knew when Robert Baratheon and Cersei Lannister and Jamie showed up, that was going to be the herald of things to come. And like, it played itself so smart, because it's like, oh, you see the kids having fun, that you kind of get whiplash when Bran is pushed out of the tower at the end of the episode. And that's what happened. It really did. And then, seeing Danny for the first time, and for me especially, going from House of the Dragon, where one of my favorite characters was King Viserys, and how kind he was, how noble how much he cared about the realms, and then seeing his descendant basically be the antithesis of everything that we came to expect. It was jarring, to say the least, but I knew what was coming his way. And then to see Danny, and to see Danny go from, like, just the season one transformation was so fun to watch.
Which is
And
what makes season 8 just so, just just so
Yeah.
upsetting because season one really laid the foundation. Since we're talking about House of the Dragon, really laid the foundation of the prophecy of the Song of Ice and Fire. Because if you look at John, you see that he doesn't really fit in, but he has his very noble king-like moments. Like he's
Yeah.
very humble. He's very caring. Like you can see the kingliness in him. Like that, he is that quote unquote prince that the prophecy speaks of. And Danny can also, since in season seven, when they speak about it a little bit, Missandei says it's it's not the term isn't by sex. Like in Valerian, like it can mean either. It can mean prince or princess. Like there's no sex to the name to that word. So you can see like Danny just going through, just pretty much going through being abused by men and coming into her own, coming into being the mother of dragons, the breaker of chains, and all the titles that she's given throughout the season because she's
Yeah.
earned it. And just like John, like all the positions that he eventually will obtain is because he earned it.
Let's head back to Winterfell. Let's head back to John because all throughout the first episode, and these are going to be my last 2 points specifically on the first episode. Like it once like once Ned decides he's going to be the hand of the king, because that's why Robert Baratheon comes to Winterfell, because he wants his old friend, his old wharf buddy, Ned Stark, to be his hand, the hand of the king. So we already know how that goes. And so John kind of has this crisis of character because it's like he knows he's the bastard. Rob, Ned's firstborn, his quote unquote true son, he treats Ned with, we can tell just by the few interactions we get, he treats Ned with respect and diligence, and like there's a love there as well. But Ned, no, uh, God, all of these damn 3 to 4 letter names. John doesn't feel like he belongs at Winterfell anymore, so he
Go
decides when his uncle Benjen shows up, and his
to the
uncle
wall.
works on the wall. He's a part of the Night Watch. He says he wants to go with him. He decides that he wants to enlist in the Night Watch and dedicate his life there because he feels like that is his place and all of the stories he heard as a kid. But there's a character that will enlighten him about it. And it's a character that I've heard about for years, about being such a fantastic character. And yeah, that is the case. Peter Dinklage as Tyrion
Yes,
Lannister. He is
Tyrion.
he
Tyrion.
is fantastic. There has been very few characters who have been built up before I watched the show that have lived up to the expectation. And I can say Tyrion Lannister is one of the few who do live up to that expectation, who lives up to the bill of being this standout character who's morally gray enough to be interesting, but still you can tell he is probably one of morally morally competent of the characters so far in the show, one of the few. And every scene he's in, he's electric. He steals it. If he's not outright, if it's not outright designed by him, yeah. And did Peter ever win any Emmys for Tyrion?
I think he did. I think he did for Game of Thrones. Yeah, I think he did win.
Oh, because he definitely deserved one. He was fantastic in it. The perfect amount of
All of
self-deprecating.
them, like all the cast, like Lena
Yes,
Headey did so good as Cersei that she made a whole culture hater character. Like that shows how great she is. And Emilia Clarke as Daenerys. Like I remember, uh 3 years ago or 4 years ago when the cast was presenting at the Emmys, and all the certain actors who played certain characters, they were cheered because people love them so much. And they're just, and you don't really get characters like this. Like, of course, you get characters that you hate and you get characters that you love, but it's just something about these. that's just like wow, that you just gravitate to, because Tyrion is one of those characters where everything he says sounds like it makes sense.
Yes.
He could be he could be giving you a load of hogwash, and it sounds like it makes sense. And it's because he like you said, he's not a soldier. He wasn't built to be a soldier. He read, like, he during the shot he read books, which is why he's as clever as he is, because he can't swing a sword, but he'll fight in another way, and that's with his brain. And Jamie is a great swordsman, and he's the soldier of the family.
Yep.
And Cersei fights with her words. Cersei fights with her, and eventually her actions. But as of right now, as we know her, her words. And is and
It's
when
and it's with it with everything. Is I would say that episode one. I just want to close out the episode one aspect of it is that episode one just does a perfect setting of the table with everything, and going into episode two, that's when the game really begins. Like the game is kind of alluded to in early on in episode one when Jamie and Cersei are talking and they're over John Aira's body.
hmm,
But once Bran go out the window and he's in his coma, things really start to heat up. And we won't go episode by episode because that'll take way too long. But
yeah,
I'll say we can. I'll say when it comes down to it, once we move past episode one and we start going through the rest of the series, the thread lines and everything really start to pick up. So let's start with I say we'll take it place by place, location by location. That's a better way to put it.
that
So
okay. Let's do that. Okay,
so
so
let's start with the
King's
place I feared
Yo, when I
going
tell you
back
Q
to
hates
every time.
this place gives him so much anxiety. King's
So
Landing gives him
so
so much.
yeah, King's Landing is essentially okay, y'all. Look, I knew Ned Stark dies at the end of season one. I know about the beheading of it all. I know that folks were like, "Oh, because he was framed as the main character." So seeing him be killed off an episode before the season finale was very shocking to a lot of people because it wasn't expected. What up, Ian? What's up? What's up?
So what's
Um,
up?
yeah. So I knew that. So the entire time I'm watching it, I'm like, "Fuck," because everything in because I knew what killed him was the fact that he didn't want to play or he didn't know how to play the Game of Thrones. He wanted to be noble. He wanted to do things the right way. He wanted to have a almost traditional valiant viewpoint of these situations, but everybody else knew what game to play, and that's why he kept getting outmaneuvered and played in the entirety of it. Every time it looked like he had some power to make a change, in reality, he never had any of it.
No,
And
because
just
North
kept
doesn't play those type of games. Like that shows like the different type of cultural contrast between the South with King's Landing, Dorne, High Garden, and all the other places in the South, as opposed to the North, like Winterfell. Like they don't play those type of games up there. So it was definitely a culture shift for him. Like when Varys and Littlefinger were trying to, manipulate him
yeah, and
into. It's crazy.
it's like I'm like, bro, stop sending me to King's Landing because I'm just gonna keep getting anxious and mad because Ned is gonna keep doing stupid shit. He's gonna keep just showing his hand, doing things himself, showing like, especially like it pissed me off because when Littlefinger is literally showing Ned all of the spies for each of the individuals who have something to gain, and he's just like, oh, I'm just gonna go to the knight and the armorer in person so people can see that I'm investigating. And it's like, dude, come on. Like you're setting yourself up to fail. And then it's like it makes it no better when Sansa is out here legitimately in love with Joffrey for nothing more because of the stories she read and the naiveness of it all.
I mean,
Arya,
she was 13. I mean, she's 13. She don't know no better. And it's like, I want to marry Joffrey. I want to have babies with blonde hair. Like
like I'm like,
she's a giddy-eyed girl. She's a giddy-eyed little girl who doesn't know anything, who thinks she knows everything.
I
And
guess to
and
channel Mike, I guess.
and that's pretty much Sansa's storyline in season 1. Like she starts to see the type of person, well, not just person, but the type of people that the Lannisters are. Because at the beginning, she's head over heels in love with Joffrey. But that incident at the river when Arya was practicing with the butcher's son, her friend, when she was practicing with her friend, and Joffrey comes and tries to, do his Joffrey thing, taunt him and try to beat him up, and Arya seeks Nymeria on him. And after, Arya sends Nymeria off, so nothing will happen to her. And then when Cersei and everybody pretty much bring the kids in to figure out what's going on, and Cersei pretty much makes Ned Stark kill Sansa's
That
dog.
that was the first instance of my anxiety skyrocketing. That whole sequence from the beginning by the riverbed to the when Ned killed Lady and that woke Bran up from his coma because he started to get his three-eye raven powers. Like it was
Not just yet. He's a Wog. At this, he finds out he's a Wog. Not he's not the three eyed Raven yet, but the Wogs are the ability to see into other people. But he will become the three eyed Raven eventually, but with some training. But yeah, that woke him up, and I'm like, see. So then, of course, the
it's
nail that hit the coffin in the head for Sansa, I think, was. Not I think I know, because this will make me hate him with the passion of 1,000 suns. Is when she's on the platform when they're about to behead Ned, they cut off his head, and Johnny because at first they were going to send him like they weren't Cersei didn't want him dead.
everybody. Yeah, the Cersei and Sansa. Sansa obviously because that's her dad, but Cersei felt like he was better for her machinations, having him in the on the wall, something that Ned wouldn't really have a problem with per se because he understands that that would be the only way to keep things moving for the realms. But in the foreshadowing of Joffrey being uncontrollable, even by his mother, he says, fuck all that. I'm the king now. These women are soft hearted, so he's a traitor off with his head, which
Mm-hmm.
is like a double edged sword in that regard. Because going back to the beginning, when you have Littlefinger, you have Varys, you have the Grand Maester, Robert's eldest son. What's his first name? I know his
Oh no,
last
that's
name.
his brother. That's his little brother. That's
Oh, his
Renly.
little. Oh yeah, yes, he did say little brother Renly. You know, all of them have their different machinations at play, but specifically Varys and Littlefinger. Littlefinger, of course, wants Kate because she chose Ned over him, and Varys he just wants what's best for the realm, so he will play any side if he thinks it'll accomplish that. And
Yep.
he's the one that basically goes to the dungeon and says, "Look, you say you committed treason. You said that you did all this plotting. We're just gonna send you to the wall. No one has to die. Your family will be safe. All of that jazz." And that was the truth at the time. But Joffrey not adhering to any of that because he's just a placeholder.
He's an
He's just
idiot. He's a idiot
placeholding
pirate.
idiot that his
Whatever.
mother that unlike Alicent, it looks like his mother doesn't have that much of a control on him at that point. But unlike Alicent, Cersei really won't care because knowing the
But
little bit I do know,
there
she
is
loves
someone who will come into the picture who will have some type of control over him. Like
yeah,
there are some people who are able to kind of like you
yeah.
know
But
get to
like,
him. But
but yeah, like that whole sequence and just where Ian says Ned was too honorable. He prioritized justice over wisdom. Seek justice, but be wise about it. Exactly.
yep.
Thank you, because that's what really pissed me off, y'all. Because it's like you want to have you want to just move swiftly and just broadly, but you're not going about it the smart way to ensure that it's
I,
accomplishable.
if I was him, like when the moment that Cersei said, when he goes to
I'll be
Cersei,
right back.
okay, well, let's backtrack. Let's backtrack. Okay, the whole reason why there was a conspiracy to kill John Aaron in the first place because he found out that Joffrey, Tommen, and Marcella were not Robert Baratheon's true heirs because they were not his kids by blood because Cersei and Jaime were in a incestual relationship, which we see at the end of episode 1. And so John Aaron found that out, which is why he died. And Ned is investigating why John Aaron is died. And so while he's in King's Landing, he's figuring all this stuff out. And when he confronts Cersei about it, he's no, he did it the wrong way. He's like, I'm gonna let people know. And because after he finds out that the kids aren't the rightful heirs, he's like, well, Stan after Robert dies, so well, Stannis Baratheon, Robert's uh, young, younger brother, is the rightful heir to the throne. And so that's why Ned is considered treason because he thinks because he said Joffrey is not the rightful heir because Joffrey is not the king's blood, which makes sense. And that's what makes this whole show so crazy because everybody, mainly the big families, Baratheon, Stark, Targaryen, they all think they have a claim to the well, not Stark. Well, that's the only big family that does not want the Iron Throne because they're more concerned about the North than anything else, which makes a whole lot of sense. And so the Targaryens, Daenerys' camp, think she should be on the throne because her father was the king. The Baratheons think that they have the right to the throne because Robert was king and he died, and it's just this whole mess. And it's just crazy.
Yeah, it's very crazy, and it's like, Ned, you should have been fucking smarter, dude.
When
That's like
Cersei
you should have played the Game of Thrones. You should have been
when
smart.
Cersei said, when you play the Game of Thrones, either you live or you die. The moment Ned had that information about the king's children weren't really his, he would have been like, okay, I know that these kids aren't yours. I'm going to keep it on the hush, but here's what I want. That's all he had to do. That's all he had to do, and Cersei would comply. Well, I know about this is Cersei, so let's think about that for a second. Like it's Cersei, but if he had allies in King's Landing like Varys and
With
Littlefinger, if he had
like,
allies,
well,
they would help
he
him.
really didn't have Littlefinger. We know that. We know Littlefinger was just waiting for a slip up. So I would say Varys and Reynolds. If he would have just leaned into that when Reynolds said I can have you 100 swords, he should have just went ahead and got with that, but he didn't want to. Why? Because he sucks. Because he just couldn't fucking do it. Like us, like that's what pissed me off. It's like, dude, you could have just Renly does have a claim at the throne, and apparently Stannis is something fierce.
Yep. Like I was just saying, every big house except for Stark thinks that they have the right to the throne. And like Stannis is gonna come to play in season 2 as far as what he looks like, and Daenerys doesn't have it at the beginning because Viserys is still alive. Viserys is still her older brother, so he has the claim to the throne. But because of his ego, then you know what? Let's go across since we did King's Landing. Let's go to across the narrow sea, shall we?
Yes.
So Daenerys is married Khal Drago. The Dothraki. They're just they're they're pretty much going to help Viserys take the throne back. That's the main reason why he married Daenerys off to Drago, so they could use the Dothraki to cross the narrow sea to reclaim the throne. So Daenerys is just like, you know what? I'm just here doing my thing, being a good wife, trying to bear Khal Drago some heirs. Like that's pretty much what I'm here for. But Viserys' ego, his abuse, is his downfall
Yep.
because the moment he touched Danny, he put his hands on Danny. He's like, "Don't you ever put your hands on me again. I am the Wolf of Khal Drago. I bet his ass." And you like, you want your crown so bad? He gets his quote unquote crown. They melt gold and they pour it on him and they kill him.
Which was one foreshadowed when Danny hit him with the gold to get her to get him off of her.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, beautiful comeuppance because like he wasn't as Danny would say, he wasn't a true dragon because the fire wouldn't have hurt him. And
Yep.
like it's he was unworthy because like it was told to Danny, you know, Aegon the Conqueror, all of these kings from the Targaryen line, they inherited the seven. Like they didn't have to take what wasn't like they didn't have to go, oh, I will reclaim what's mine because it was always theirs. So just the simple fact that Viserys was talking about taking the kingdoms, whereas Danny knew it was already hers, showed the discrepancy in their mindset. That who was the
Mm-hmm.
true leader and who was the fraud. And
Yep.
Khal Drogo was one hardcore dude. He was not playing no
She
games.
softened him. That's the thing about Danny. Like she softened him. When it came to her specifically, like that's what I'm saying. Like when she learned how to not necessarily play him per se, but to make him see her more than what he saw her at first. Like you could see the true love between them, and that's why Kyle did what he did to Viserys because he didn't want to see his wife abused anymore by her brother.
Hmm.
And so he's like, you know what? I'll take care of it. I got you. I got you, boo. I got you. That's pretty much what it was. And
Like we knew his ass was through when he had the sword pointed at her stomach and then said fucking, oh, he could have the air, he'll cut it out of her and leave it for him. Like that was like, no, dude, you are not getting up out of here.
hmm
They broke his arm, they broke his sword arm and poured that poured that gold over his head and all of that. And the fact that you see Danny go through and really ingratiate herself with the Dothraki when then that would inevitably become her people when um when all is said and done, you really see the markings of her true leadership, how easy it is for her to get people on her side. And we start seeing the genesis of her mission statements, no slaves because she was one, and showing kindness and mercy when it's doable. But we also see the origins of her fierceness because
hmm
in one of the raids in towns, she sees the Dothraki going out and, murdering, killing, raping, kidnapping, the whole shebang. And she decides that, no, she doesn't want to see that happening any longer. So she saves a woman and her people from, being killed and raped and whatnot, presumably. This leads to a fight between Carl and one of his subordinates, and he gets a little wound and whatnot. The woman she saves says basically that she's a witch and she could save him and that whole thing. And inevitably, he does start to succumb to the wound because it gets infected. Danny asks for her help, but the help isn't the help she thinks it is because not only does she lose her son, which was meant to be the stallion who would mount the world, basically rule over everything. Carl basically becomes a vegetable. He lives, but he loses everything that makes him a Carl. And I was pissed. I ain't gonna lie. I was pissed off because I was like, how the fuck can you do that to Danny? Okay, we get it. Carl is not the he's not without fault. The Dothraki do enslave, they pillage, they murder, they rape. We understand that. But like she did show you mercy. She did intend for you to be a part of this and to presumably go into it. And then she did say in her defense, which is a fantastic one, she said that she was already raped before Danny got there. She, the people she would tend to were already murdered, so it really didn't do anything. So she made that very strong point, which I understood, which only reinforced that there are no heroes really in Game of Thrones, just people who, depending on how well you like them, you empathize with their point more.
Mhm.
But Danny had to get her lick back, as they say in the streets. As unfortunate as it was, she couldn't just let her go get away with killing her husband, the Carl, and let that go unpunished. And she said, "Fuck it, mask off. I'm going to use this to solidify my stance on who I am, the Khaleesi." So she said that everybody that was captured, you can go. Anybody that was with Carl but not with her, y'all can go. But if y'all stay with me, you will know power. You will be protected and all of that. Strap the witch up to the goddamn pyre that she put Carl on. She said, "I don't want your screams, but I want your life," because she said she was going to die screaming. She started singing at first, but then inevitably them songs turned to screams. Then the big homie Danny walked into the fire pyre, and then when the sun was rising, Avia,
Mother of dragons.
you want to tell
Like,
these big folks what was going on?
oh man, that moment was everything. Like, because everyone's like, dragons haven't existed in Westeros for over 100 years. Since House of the Dragon, which Dance of the Dragons is when all the dragons are said to have died. During the war, and just Danny being the one to be able to hatch 3 dragons was epic. Because that's the moment she became Mother Dragon. She is the only Targaryen left that we know of that is left, and she hatched 3 of them, not just one, but 3, and they're her babies. Like, they're her babies now, and it's just, it was just a great, scene. Loved it. Q, you here? You back? Hello, Q.
Can you hear me
Yeah, I can
now?
hear you. Yeah, I can hear
Test
you.
one, test two.
Yeah, got you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I just had some technical difficulties.
Got you. And it was just, and when later in the series, we see how big they get, and we see Drogon pretty much being on his mama's shoulder, like, yeah, Drogon's gonna be mama's favorite. Drogon's mama's favorite. Like, there's no denying it, because that's the one that she rides all the time, the one she cares about the most. Like, they say parents never have favorites, but they do, and Drogon is definitely hers. Now, once she hatches her dragons, now the plan is on. Like, now that she is the last living Targaryen, like, her plan is to take her throne back. So that's pretty much where Dany's mindset is at the end of season 1. Now, on to Winterfell. Once Ned leaves, Cat is there and looking after Bran, since he fell. And Rob's there, helping her. Rickon's there. Sansa and Arya, they went to King's Landing with Ned. And she gets word about things going south in King's Landing, so she decides to go to King's Landing to visit and figure out what's going on, to get Arya and Sansa. And she meets Ned, she meets Littlefinger and all that, and she finds out Tyrion, because there was assassination attempt after everyone
Yes.
leaves. There was assassination attempt to kill Bran because he saw Cersei and Jaime doing it in the tower, but nobody knows that except for Bran. So there's this Valyrian steel blade that comes back to House of the Dragon. That the heirs, all the heirs are that's passed down to all the Targaryen heirs, made of Valyrian steel. And
Question:
yes,
is that the knife that cuts Rhaenyra?
yes, that's the same one.
Nah. So that dagger basically is when you see that, you know shit finna go down for the worst.
Mm-hmm. So there's assassination attempt to try and kill Bran, and Kat is furious. Like, she's trying to go to King's Landing, figure out like what happened, like what the hell happened to why are they trying to kill my son? And pretty much her and Ned are pretty much on the same like type of investigation, and she thinks Tyrion did it because that's what she was told. that it was a Lannister blade, the highborn, someone highborn, it's their weapon. So she's told that it was Tyrion. So she finds Tyrion, she kidnaps him, and takes him to the Eyrie, to the Vale, to her sister, so he can, be tried, for the killing of. She thinks she killed John Arryn, thinks he killed his son. Like, Cat wants justice, and he's put in a cell, and they give him a chance to do combat, no, uh, one-on-one combat. He picks his champion. He wins, so he's set free, and Tyrion is sent back to. Uh,
Gave him the Mortal Kombat fatality, knocked him down the hole, and he just fell his ass down. That was
the moon door, through the moon door.
shout outs to Mord. He was hilarious too. Like every
Yes.
time Tyrion tried to get his attention, just came in with that damn club. What do you want? Where's gold? Lannisters always pay their debts too.
Yep. There's always sayings. Lannisters always pay their. Lannisters always. Each house has like their own saying.
Yep.
And so Rob soon he gets word that Sansa writes him, and Rob decides he calls the banners of Winterfell and House Stark and all the other houses in the north to lead an assault on King's Landing so they can get Ned and get his sisters out of King's Landing. And that's where Rob is. Rob's becoming the young wolf, the leader of the North Army, and eventually, he is dubbed King of the North. And yeah, when Rob finds out about Ned, it's heartbreaking.
Yes.
Like when all the Starks find out, because Arya's there. Pretty much Arya's storyline is, when she gets to King's Landing. No, Arya's a tomboy through and through. Like there's no mistaking it. She's a tomboy through and through. She doesn't want to be a lady. Like she doesn't want to knit or do needlework or wear fancy clothes or anything like that. She wants to just be an adventurer, be a knight. And so when she gets to King's Landing, she takes sword lessons, well, quote unquote, dance lessons with Cyril Farrell, who pretty much teaches her how to sword
Shout out
fight.
to him, by the way.
Dope dude. And she becomes dangerous with it. Like later on, you will see like
She
don't
becomes
play.
the girl.
Arya don't play.
I know for a fact she becomes the girl with the many faces because she can
Yep.
switch out her face for her assassinations with needle.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and before John leaves, he gives her a needle, which is a very cute moment. It shows that she really cares about John. John really cares about her.
And they
And
won't see each other until season 8, right?
yeah, episode 1, season 8. Yeah, that was their first episode. It's crazy because they don't have any scenes together for 7 whole seasons.
I might just skip to that part. I might watch that part on YouTube just to feel something after all of the pain and suffering I've experienced.
Like the Stark reunion scenes, especially Jon and Sansa in season 6, Sansa and Arya season 7, and Sansa and Bran in season 7, and then Jon and Arya in
So I
season
know
8.
what I'll be doing before I head on out today. I will be watching those scenes because I cannot. I'm sorry, I can't deal with pain for 4 seasons, and then I have to see those now. I have to, and then I'll just delete my memory of those so I can feel their pain again.
Mm-hmm.
But
and so Rob's best friend, who grew up with them,
Theon
Greyjoy, he pretty much, he's been living with the Stark since he was 8, and his father, Balon Greyjoy, pretty much as a he pretty much fought a losing war, and so Ned took Theon in, and Theon, he resents the Starks in a way. He does, but he doesn't. Like he considers them family, but at the same time not, because he does miss his true home, which is the Iron Islands.
He's almost in a way a reflection of how Jon could be, because Jon is a bastard. He's an outsider. We can see from the second episode when he sees when he before he leaves, he talks to Bran one last time, and Kat really doesn't want him in her presence because,
Oh,
as she says
oh,
later on, you know, Ned went off to war by himself and then came back with a child. So there's been that resentment.
see, and
And
this is what also pisses me off about Ned. Now, granted, I get it. They did this for the long game for the big reveal in season 7. I get it. I understand it, but it just pisses me off because, first of all, Kat doesn't seem like the type of woman who would, just hold a grudge against a kid who had nothing to do with that. Like, John is an innocent kid. Like, why are you so pissed off at him? Ned should be the one that you should be pissed off at, not him. Like, why are you mad at John? Like, John can't control who his parents are. That was her one major flaw that I'm just like, okay. Because there was a story that she tells in season 3 that's like, oh, but all this could have been resolved with her and John's. Because I wish there was an episode where either Kat like or like a scene, not episode, but like a scene or something where Kat like either A apologizes to John for the way that she treated him or wrote a letter to him by Raven or something, like just apologizing for how she treated him because it wasn't necessary. Like it wasn't necessary. And the moment that Ned decided to actually keep a secret, it was the one that he actually needed to tell Kat the most.
mm-hmm.
Because
And
she
from
could
what
have
I
helped protect him. Okay, should I just spoil it already? Should
no,
I
no,
just
no, 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 no. We're gonna hold off on any more season next season spoilers because we gotta go to one last location before we wrap up, and hopefully Mike will be able to join us before then. But we now go to the place where the true danger is because, and I was watching after every episode they had the inside the episode for Game of Thrones, and this was kind of I believe this was illustrated in the last episode, inside the episode, where they were talking about the Game of Thrones has a double meaning. The game is obviously who gets to sit on the Iron Throne, who through the machinations of each family that wanted, et cetera, et cetera, the Baratheons, Targaryens, Lannisters, stuff like that. But the other meaning of Game of Thrones is that when you understand what the true danger is, when you understand what truly is lurking in the darkness, what truly is the biggest threat, all of the stuff happening in King's Landing is like a game. It's nothing more than a game because winter is coming. The White Walkers are coming.
and
And as
that's the one thing they don't understand. Like that's the only people who care about that are the people at the wall who are protecting it in the wildlings, the people who are actually protecting them from it. Like
yeah,
going to the wall. It's like, it's this big ice wall, 100,000 miles long, many castles guarded. John gets there. He's getting the lay of the land. He's called Ned Stark's bastard. Tyrion's up there with him for a little bit.
helping him understand his soon to be brothers, that because John comes in there very arrogant, thinks that because he is Ned Stark's son, and that Ned Stark was once the leader of the Watch and all of well, he is the leader of the Night Watch and all of that. He feels like he should be first in line to be a ranger and all of that. But then we see Tyrion basically say, well, not all of these people are the criminals like they're made out to be. Some of them have just been dealt bad hands, and some of them have no place in the world, so they choose to come here to make something of themselves. And then John starts to humble himself. And then when we see Samwell enter the picture, he really, that humbling and the humbling continues, as well as him creating new brothers, comrades in arms to fight for, to stand with, who he'll need for the coming battles ahead.
Yep.
And
And Sam's Sam is not a fighter. Like he's not. He's a very plump man, but he's a very kind man. He's a very smart man. Like he's knowledgeable. Like he's very knowledgeable. And The reason why Sam is at the wall is because his father pretty much doesn't think that he'll amount to anything. And when you go to the wall, you pretty much start from scratch. Like you don't get your family, you don't get your titles get stripped away. Anything like land, name, like money, like all that, like goes away. And you wear black, and then you take your oath. You know, and now my watch begins. And so John, and like he is starting to understand the depths of what is going to happen, which is why he's the one who pretty much leads the charge later, as for the White Walkers coming. And they, just him being at the wall is necessary, because if he wasn't there at the wall, he would not know what is going on. I think that's important, that him being at the wall is very important, and it being there also helps him come into the leader that he's soon going to be, in the world this Westerosi world is going to need.
Yes, indeed. Yes, 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 indeed. Because just a couple of glimpses we had of what the White Walkers are capable of, um, it's going to be a rough journey. It's going to be a rough, rough journey, and
Oh yeah.
yeah. But before we wrap it on up, let's pour some. Let's pour out some liquor for our fallen friends from season one. Because boy, oh boy, was there an even though the body count is going to rise, we had some OGs who passed the who met their maker. Um, Shout out to the noble knight fighting on Lady Tully's behalf. He was
Hmm.
the antagonist in the situation, but he fought with honor. But
Hmm.
he lost to a scoundrel.
Yep.
Um, Throji, I hope I pronounced his name right. Ned's right hand man, his buddy in arms. He got Omega clapped by Jamie with that dagger to the eye. Hate to see it. Khal Drogo wasn't the nicest dude and wasn't completely sin free, but did he love him some Danny? So that already puts him in my good graces, and he deserved a warrior's death. He didn't deserve to go out like that, basically in hell. And of course, well, before I go any further, Sansa, and Arya's Septa. She
Hmm.
died trying to save Sansa. Um, Hugh, Sir Hugh, he got javelined in the throat by the mountain. That was a pretty rough going of it. And of course, last but not least, the last person to die who didn't deserve it. Well, I'm not gonna say Serial just yet because I don't know if he lived or died. If he somehow made it out, I'll I'll watch further. I'm not gonna ask Avia to spoil it for me just yet. Um, but the last one to pour out the 40 ounce for Ned Stark. You beautiful stupid idiot who
And
just
also
could.
the butcher's boy. We can't forget the butcher's boy,
Oh yeah,
Arya's friend.
Arya's
Oh,
friend
and
who.
my last thought: the moment Ned, well, no, the moment Arya started making her list was when pretty much Cersei wanted to kill Nymeria. That was when her list started. But the moment that Ned was decapitated and Arya was there, she was hidden from it. She heard it, but she would Ned's friend made sure that she didn't see it. And the moment that Ned died, that's when her list started. Like Cersei is number one on her. Joffrey and Cersei are number one and two on her shit list, and that's when her
And
list starts.
and what's the line in regards to the list? What's the line
Uh,
for that?
oh, she just she says the list, like it's like winter is coming. That's it. When winter is coming, winter is coming for all of you. Like, because there's a oh, there's so much I want to say.
Okay, well we're gonna I'm
It's
gonna
so
hold
good.
off.
I'm not
So
gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it. But
oh,
there's
Avia does it. Avia doesn't get too tempted any further. Thank y'all for kicking it with us on this first
Yes, check
episode.
out What's the Tea. Yes, and also check out all the rest of our great content on the
Yes.
channel. Q's got gaming stuff. We got the main, so check all those out.
Yes, indeed. With this is now, even though What's the T is going to run still regularly, this is going to be an 8-part subsection, one part for each season that we're
Hmm.
going to, rock out through. We're going to try to
Yep.
fit in as much as we can for February, and we're going to just continue on because we're gonna do our damnedest to try to keep the hype going until House of the Dragon season 2 comes back next year.
Oh,
Golly.
speaking of which, it got delayed. Season two.
What?
Season two should have got delayed for about a month until April because they're reworking the script. They're doing rewrites on the script. So yeah, April,
Oh,
April 17th. That's when they're going to start shooting.
not the rewrites.
So about 2 more months.
Well, in
So
any
I'd rather
case,
them rewrite it. I'd rather them rewrite and fix some things now than have people
yeah,
on the timeline like grilling them later. Like
yeah,
take
yeah.
your
That
time.
is
Take your time.
that is true. That's very true. Well, in any case, y'all, this has been your boy Q.
Avia.
Yes, yes, yes. And Mike will be back next time. He had some technical difficulties that were unforeseen, but we who knows? Avia Mike might come back to it next time when they're rocking out with the regular What's the Tea. Because I got to talk
Mhm.
to y'all about Mayfair, which has been doing
Yep.
numbers and got greenlit for season 2. So yeah. But in
Yep.
any case, this has been your boy Quamon Star G and the good sis Avia. And we will see y'all later. Let's say peace
Peace.
on out. Yeah.